The image of a young, unassuming soldier stares back at us from a photograph taken between 2009 and 2010. At approximately 20 years old, the fresh-faced military trainee couldn't have imagined that within a decade, he would become one of Africa's most consequential leaders and the world's youngest president. This is the story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, whose path from humble beginnings to revolutionary leadership echoes the words of Frederick Douglass from 1852. A slave who does not fight for his freedom will remain a slave forever. Ibrahim Traoré was born on March 14, 1988, in the commune of Bondakouy in Burkina Faso. His early education took place in his hometown for primary school, followed by secondary education in Bobo-Dioulasso, the country's second largest city. Unlike many Burkina officers who entered military service as teenagers, Traoré pursued civilian education first. In 2006, he moved to the capital Ouagadougou to study geology at Joseph Kizerbo University, where he distinguished himself as a student representative known for defending his classmates in disputes. His academic diligence paid off when he graduated with honors in 2009. That same year, Traoré made a pivotal decision to join the Georges Namoano Military Academy. This institution, while respectable, was considered second-tier compared to the prestigious Kadiogo Military Academy that had produced notable leaders like Thomas Sankara and Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. After completing his military education in 2012, he was sent to Morocco for specialized anti-aircraft training before being assigned to an infantry unit in Kaya, a town in northern Burkina Faso. Traoré's career took a significant turn in 2014 when he received his promotion to lieutenant. That same year, he was deployed to Mali as part of the United Nations peacekeeping mission known as MINUSMA, United Nations Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali. This assignment would prove formative as it placed him directly on the front lines against jihadist groups and ethnic insurgents destabilizing the Sahel region. During his service in Mali, Traoré demonstrated remarkable courage. In 2018, he showed exceptional bravery during a complex attack by militants in the northern Timbuktu region. By 2019, he was participating in Operation Otapouanou in Burkina Faso's troubled eastern regions, spending 7 months in counterinsurgency operations. He later served in a detachment at Marcoye in Burkina Faso's northern Sahel region. At the volatile three-border zone, where Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger meet, those who served with Traoré described him as willful, courageous, and close to his men, qualities that would later serve him well as a leader. His promotion to captain came in 2020, but this advancement coincided with growing frustration among younger officers regarding their superiors' inability to contain the mounting jihadist threat. One incident in 2020 illustrated Traoré's leadership qualities and tactical intelligence. When the town of Barcelogo in central Burkina Faso was on the verge of falling to jihadists, the main highway was believed to be mined. Rather than risk this route, Traoré led his men across the countryside on a commando track, arriving in time to liberate the town. Such experiences put him and other frontline officers in a difficult position, witnessing firsthand the government's inadequate response to the security crisis while bearing the brunt of combat. By this time, Burkina Faso was in the grip of a severe security crisis. Jihadist groups carried out armed attacks, abductions, carjackings, planted improvised explosive devices, launched rockets, and set ambushes. The Sahel, North, Central North, and Eastern regions were most severely affected. By late 2021, a humanitarian crisis had developed, with a quarter of the population facing food insecurity. The situation continued to deteriorate, with more than 3,000 people killed by mid-September 2022, exceeding the death toll for all of 2021. Approximately 2 million people had been displaced from their homes. In January 2022, amid this spiraling crisis, a military coup led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba overthrew the civilian government of President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore. Damiba justified the takeover by citing Kabore's failure to address the worsening security situation. Upon seizing power, Damiba established the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration, MPSR, and promised to reconquer territories lost to insurgents and enable displaced persons to return home. Captain Ibrahim Traore became a member of the MPSR junta. In March 2022, Damiba promoted him to head of artillery in the Kaya Regiment in central Burkina Faso, a decision that would ironically pave the way for his own downfall. Unfortunately, the security situation worsened during Damiba's brief tenure. Attacks by militant Islamists increased as they seized rural territories and surrounded cities. Soldiers stationed in remote areas often faced delays in receiving their pay, deepening their frustration. Traoré's regiment became a center of discontent, and he was tasked by his colleagues with conveying their grievances to President Damiba. He made several trips to Ouagadougou for this purpose but received little response. The tipping point came on September 26, 2022, when jihadist forces attacked a 150-truck convoy carrying food to Djibo, one of the main cities in the war-torn north. This city of 60,000 people had been under siege by terrorist groups for about 18 months. The attack, claimed by an al-Qaeda-linked group, killed 37 people, including 27 soldiers. Coming just days after Damiba had led a 70-person delegation to the United Nations Summit in New York, a trip perceived as wasteful given the country's dire situation, this defeat crystallized the military's frustration. In the aftermath, Traoré traveled to Ouagadougou to seek an audience with President Damiba, but received no answer. Faced with what they perceived as contempt, Traoré and fellow officers decided to take action. At dawn on September 30th, 2022, gunfire erupted across Ouagadougou, signaling the beginning of another coup. By 8 p.m. local time, Captain Ibrahim Traoré appeared on national television, surrounded by armed and masked soldiers, announcing that he was taking over as head of the MPSR and deposing Lieutenant Colonel Damiba. The coup leaders justified their actions by claiming Damiba had betrayed their shared vision, failing to address the deteriorating security situation and instead focusing on political adventures. They stated that despite attempts to persuade Damiba to refocus on fighting the insurgency, his refusal left them no choice but to remove him. The coup initially faced challenges. On October 1st, with their takeover struggling, Traoré and his officers accused Damiba of seeking refuge at the French military base in Camboinsen, allegedly planning a counteroffensive. While the French government denied this claim, it ignited anti-French sentiment among the population. Thousands of protesters targeted the French embassy and cultural institutes in Ouagadougou and Bobo-Dioulasso, transforming what began as a military coup into a popular uprising against perceived foreign interference. By the next morning, momentum had shifted decisively in Traoré's favor, as several army units, including the Air Force and Special Forces, declared their allegiance to him. Damiba was forced to resign, reportedly on the condition that his safety and that of his allies would be guaranteed. 6 days later, Traoré was sworn in as the interim leader of Burkina Faso. He arrived at the ceremony in military attire, wearing a face mask that concealed his features. At just 34 years of age, Captain Ibrahim Traoré became the world's youngest head of state. Thousands of Burkinabe citizens gathered in the capital to celebrate his ascension in what resembled a victory parade. Traoré's age stands in stark contrast to many African leaders, including Paul Biya of Cameroon, who at 91 is Africa's oldest president. To match Biya's age, one would need to double Traoré's age and add 19 years. From the outset, Traoré made it clear that he had no interest in the formalities of political office. He declared that his focus was on reviving a nation that seemed to be collapsing, stating that no sacrifice would be too great to restore peace and freedom to Burkina Faso. Speculation about external support for Traoré emerged quickly. Just 2 days after the coup, journalists from the New York Times and Reuters suggested evidence of Russian involvement, specifically the Wagner Group, in Traoré's rise to power. However, Traoré denied these claims, telling France 24 that he didn't need Wagner soldiers from Russia because he had established a local equivalent called VDP, Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland. Nevertheless, the secrecy surrounding his connections with Russia was partially lifted on September 27, 2023, when he attended the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. During this event, he openly stated that Russia is one family with Burkina Faso and extended this familial relationship to all of Africa, citing shared historical struggles. Russia made enormous sacrifices to liberate the world from Nazism during the Second World War. The people of Africa, our grandfathers, were also forcibly deported to help Europe get rid of Nazism. We share the same history in the sense that we are the forgotten peoples of the world. This statement removed any doubt about Traoré's alignment with Russia, as he explicitly called Russians brothers and declared his support for working with them. Initially, Traoré promised to hold democratic elections by July 2024. However, on May 25, 2024, the junta announced an extension of its rule for another 5 years, with Traoré remaining in power. This decision sparked mixed reactions both domestically and internationally, raising questions about the junta's commitment to returning to civilian governance. Since taking power, Traoré's relations with France, Burkina Faso's former colonial ruler, have been consistently tense. In January 2023, Burkina Faso gave France 1 month to withdraw its troops, ending a military accord that had allowed French forces to fight insurgents on Burkina Faso territory. The following month, the two countries officially marked the end of French military operations in the nation after a flag-lowering ceremony at the French Special Forces camp. Traoré has maintained a distinctive appearance throughout his time in power, consistently wearing military combat attire, complete with a red beret, tactical gloves, and a pistol on his right thigh. This has become his signature look, reflecting his military background and commitment to leading from the front in the fight against insurgency. Unlike most African presidents who live in lavish palaces, ride in luxury vehicles, and draw enormous salaries, Ibrahim Traoré has chosen a markedly different path. In an unprecedented move, he refused the standard presidential salary of $76,000, opting instead to keep his military captain's pay, which is significantly lower. For context, the average salary of an African president is approximately $170,000 annually, while the average monthly income in Burkina Faso is merely $73. Traoré didn't stop at rejecting his salary. He reduced government salaries by 20%, redirecting these resources to address the nation's most pressing needs. With the funds saved, he invested in long-term projects focused on empowering the Burkina Faso people, building schools, mechanizing agriculture, establishing textile factories, creating domestic tomato processing plants to reduce dependency on imports, and laying the groundwork for oil refineries. These are not short-term initiatives, but long-term investments designed to drive the country's economic development for decades. In stark contrast to leaders across Africa who flaunt their wealth through expensive cars, private jets, and sprawling mansions, Traoré embraces simplicity. He drives a basic car, wears military fatigues, and lives modestly. His leadership philosophy appears to be that his duty is to his people, not to personal luxury. This approach has earned him comparisons to Burkina Faso's revolutionary hero, Thomas Sankara, who similarly valued service over personal comfort. Like Sankara, Traoré demonstrates that humility in leadership doesn't equate to weakness, but rather strengthens the bond between a leader and their people. Traoré also maintains an unusual level of privacy regarding his personal life. Unlike many African leaders who publicly display their families and relationships, very little is known about Traoré's private affairs. Photos of his wife and children are not readily available online, reflecting his focus on the country's future rather than personal attention. In November 2024, Traoré survived an attempted coup against his government. The plot involved a mysterious figure who entered Burkina Faso under the pretense of a business trip, bringing 5 billion CFA francs, approximately $8.17 million, intended to bribe soldiers into destabilizing the country. The suspect, linked to influential foreign interests, sought to exploit Burkina Faso's strategic position and abundant natural resources, including gold and other minerals. The conspirators' plan was to bribe soldiers with large sums of money to secure their loyalty and ignite chaos that would shift power. However, the approached soldiers remained loyal to Burkina Faso and played along while reporting the suspects' movements to their superiors. Over several weeks, they gathered critical information that exposed the full extent of the conspiracy. On the day of the planned exchange, authorities conducted a sting operation, apprehending the suspect with a suitcase full of cash. Hidden cameras and surveillance had recorded everything, providing undeniable evidence of the plot. The arrest revealed a far-reaching conspiracy with connections to foreign operatives and mercenaries operating in the Sahel region, funded by powerful foreign entities as part of a broader strategy to destabilize Burkina Faso and other West African nations. This foiled plot underscored the lengths to which foreign powers would go to maintain control over Africa's resources and highlighted the growing resistance of nations like Burkina Faso against exploitation. As of October 2025, Ibrahim Traoré had been in power for 2 years, delivering on over 80% of his promises and transforming Burkina Faso in ways that exceeded expectations. His achievements spanned multiple sectors. In infrastructure, Traoré initiated the Rail project, a nationwide railway network connecting provincial capitals with 75% government ownership and 25% private investment. This included a manufacturing plant in Bobo Dioulasso for local production of train wagons and rails. The project, costing 70 billion CFA francs, was set to be completed in 18 months, creating jobs and fostering trade. In energy, his administration partnered with Russia's Rosatom to build a nuclear power plant, focusing on clean energy, healthcare, and industrial development. This initiative aimed to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and expand electricity access across the country. Additionally, renewable energy projects included the nation's largest hydroelectric dam. For healthcare, the government began building the pharmaceutical technopole in Kougou to produce medicines domestically, reducing dependency on imports and improving healthcare access. This 70 billion CFA franc initiative was projected to create jobs and promote local production over 5 years. Mobile health clinics were established to provide essential care to remote areas, addressing healthcare disparities. To increase the value of natural resources, Traoré set up a gold refinery for local processing, built a tomato processing plant to reduce imports, and promoted agricultural mechanization. This included free tractor services and subsidized seeds and fertilizers, which boosted food security by over 50% in just 2 years. Military reforms under Traoré reclaimed territories once lost to insurgents. Advanced weaponry and strategic alliances with Russia, Turkey, and China strengthened the military's capabilities. Key regions like Djibo were liberated, reconnecting isolated areas and uniting the Sahel region against terrorism. The Rapid Intervention Battalion and Volunteers for Homeland Defense recorded significant victories against terrorist groups. On the cultural and economic front, French was abolished as the official language, reflecting a commitment to Pan-African ideals. Civil servants' salaries increased, and the establishment of the Central Bank of Burkina Faso ensured financial independence from France. In just 2 years, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has reshaped Burkina Faso, building a nation defined by resilience, independence, and progress. His leadership style, reminiscent of Thomas Sankara, has led many to draw parallels between the two leaders, with some even suggesting a spiritual continuity between Sankara's revolution and Traoré's governance. Some observers, drawing on the philosophical concept of metempsychosis, the transmigration of souls, have poetically suggested that when Thomas Sankara was tragically killed on October 15, 1987, his revolutionary spirit wandered until finding a new vessel in Ibrahim Traoré, born the following year. While this is metaphorical rather than literal, the similarities in their leadership approaches, prioritizing the welfare of common citizens over elite interests, living modestly and challenging foreign exploitation, are striking. Traoré's story is still unfolding, but his impact on Burkina Faso and potentially the broader African political landscape is already significant. He represents a new generation of African leadership that rejects the patterns of self-enrichment and foreign dependency that have characterized many post-colonial governments. Whether his model of governance proves sustainable and whether he ultimately fulfills his promise to return the country to democratic rule remains to be seen. However, his bold actions and apparent commitment to serving his people rather than himself have already made him a noteworthy figure in contemporary African politics. The young soldier from that early photograph has indeed become one of the most influential leaders of his time, achieving what many could never have imagined through a route to power that, while controversial, has given hope to many Burkina Faso citizens yearning for a government that truly serves their interests.